But I finally convinced some clients to buy some Bitcoin, to buy some Ethereum, to, invest in Dan's funds and blockchain capital with the brothers. I had managed money for endowments, and I was working down here at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And the short version is we had done quite well from 2000 2002 in the first tech wreck, mostly because we had a lot of hedge funds and a lot of venture capital. And so we were flat in that whole period. Average endowment down 25%. A couple wealthy families came and said, "Hey, why don't you come work for us?" I'm like, nice of you to ask, but I don't really want to work for one firm, but maybe starting a firm called Outsourced CIO. In fact, I actually technically think I coined the term OCIO. I think I was the first one to use it in a presentation way back when in 2004. And so we launched with a couple clients. We grew that to a handful of clients and a nice little business, morphed from there into fund of funds. In 2008, one of our biggest investors, an individual institution-like capital, came to us and said, your fund stuff does well, fund to funds, 15, 16%, that's great. But your direct deals, like Liquid Death, we co-invested in that directly through a fund relationship. But your deals, they do better. They do 30%. I said, well, that's not because we're geniuses, just math. Right? We're holding for a shorter period of time because we come in later, and we pay 70% less fees because we're going direct. Mm-hmm. So we get 30% IRRs. So we launched a series of direct investment funds and made a bunch of direct investments. So fast forward, one of the things we had always done is back talent, and mostly in the hedge fund space, but also in the venture capital and private equity space. But we backed pretty much anyone who came out of Tiger. Julian Robertson, mentor of mine for many years, very lucky. And everyone who left, whether it was Lee Ainsley to form Maverick, or John Griffin to form Blue Ridge, or Steve Mandel to form Lone Pine, or Dan Moorhead to form Pantera. And so we gave him his first institutional check 20 some odd years ago to do a macro fund. 2013, he calls me up and says, "Hey, you want to have dinner?" I'm like, "Sure, I always want to have dinner with my friend." So I go out to San Francisco, sit down, and he says, "Hey, I'm shutting down the fund. I'm giving back the money, and I'm going to spend the rest of my career on blockchain and Bitcoin." I'm like, "Dan, why would you give back $1 billion, charging 2 and 20? He's like, "Because this is going to be the greatest thing." I'm like, "Okay." And look, in 2013, I had heard of Bitcoin.
Sure.
I knew what blockchain was, kind of. But I was not running drugs on Silk Road. I was not a cryptography student. And I didn't get it, right? I would say the Winklevoss twins and I were introduced to Bitcoin the same month, May 2013. They're multi-billionaires and I'm not. Why?
Exactly.
They were in a visa with the guys and I wasn't. And I wasn't part of that culture. And so I was skeptical. And it took me a while to do the work. But as soon as Dan said infrastructure, picks and shovels, I'm like, oh, I've made a lot of money in that. We invested in Google and eBay and Yahoo and the internet. And then we did a bunch in the mobile net around 2010. Yeah, this all made sense to me. So we invested in his venture fund. It's up, 20 times at this point. It's done well. FTX is a big investment. And make a long story short, it took me a couple years to get comfortable, but I finally convinced some clients to buy some Bitcoin, to buy some Ethereum, to, invest in Dan's funds and blockchain capital with the brothers. And then I met Pomp. And it was funny. I met Pomp through a deal. We were investing in Lyft. We were early investors in Uber, early investors in Didi, Quadi, which became Didi, in Ola and Grab and Lyft. And we were trying to convince Pomp and his partner Jason to invest in Lyft through one of our special purpose vehicles. And I thought he was a nice guy. He had just moved back to North Carolina. He had left Snap. And make a long story short, spent 20 minutes together. They ended up doing something separately and didn't see him for like 9 months. And then I heard him on a podcast, the Power Podcast. I heard him on O'Shaughnessy's podcast. And it was only 25 minutes. It was super short. And I said, I'm going to follow him. I hit follow on Twitter and like, like. That's something I would say. That is something I said. And I'm like, I got to meet this guy. So met him for breakfast. And this is the end of 2017. And met him for breakfast. Then turned into lunch. Turned into breakfast the next day. And at the end of the second day, I'm like, we got to do something together. So we figured out we'd come together and form Morgan Creek Digital. So Morgan Creek Capital, umbrella organization, Morgan Creek Digital inside. Jason and Pomp came in. We formed a fund. We raised a small fund, $40 million, made 29 investments. It's worked out really nicely. It's up. So we met this really visionary duo at Fairfax County. So they run the 2 pension funds there, and they gave us 21 of the 41 that we raised.
Wow.
And the rest is history, so to speak. So we did that in 2018, raised another fund in 2020. And about halfway through the second fund, I was a $100 million fund, Pomp comes to me and says, hey, I got this call. And I tell the story, you see the Fighting Irish in the background. I tell the story of how I got to Notre Dame. I used to work at Notre Dame. And I would say Lou Holtz had a lifetime contract, at Minnesota, unless Notre Dame called. Notre Dame called, he goes to Notre Dame, great year, wins the national championship, or great 11 years, wins the national championship. And I was working at a firm in Chicago, and I got the call from Notre Dame. I wanted to go back to my alma mater. So I did that. And he said, I got this call from Naval, and he wants me to go do this solo VC thing. And I'm really sorry. And I know I said, dude, look, if Naval called me, I'm probably leaving and go work for the guy. I mean, he's the philosopher king. And I said, don't worry about it. So he and Jason downshifted to venture partners. And I basically had a choice, right? I could say, it was fun, and I'm going to shut it down, right? It was a good experiment, raised 2 funds. I don't want to do that. I love what I'm doing now. I'm having more fun than I've ever had in my career. And that is not a criticism of the rest of my career. It's just, I had a blast working for universities. I had a blast building Morgan Creek Capital. And now I'm going to spend the next, 15, 20 years doing Morgan Creek Digital. And it is amazingly fun. And so I'm not going to shut it down. So then I could go recruit somebody from one of the big dogs like A16Z. Too expensive. They got more money than God. All right. I could promote someone from within. I had 2 young guys. They were good, but not good enough. I mean, not mature enough, not seasoned enough. Or I could go, find some other people who had been in the business. And so I found these 2 guys who had been running a fund. We had co-invested in a couple deals, Figure, and we were working together on the DM project, which actually never came together, but we were working on being one of the validator nodes. And long story short, I brought them in. So Jason and Pomp are venture partners. I've got 2 new general partners, and the 5 of us make Morgan Creek Digital. We just closed our 3rd fund and still make investments. We made about 70 investments in infrastructure businesses. We put about 20% of the capital. We can go up to 30, but we put about 20% of the capital in protocols directly. Bitcoin, Ethereum, we're big investors in Solana. So that's the story. His first love is healthcare, right? He built FastMed, which was the first doc in the box, he was a physician assistant and said, most of what happens in an ER could happen in an office. Yeah. And it could be with a physician assistant, not a doc, so I can cut the cost. And he built this business, sold it for $500 million to private equity. And he liked digital. He kind of came into digital through another entrepreneurial venture where he recycles tires and converts it into energy. And hey, we can use the energy to mine Bitcoin. So that's how he and Pomp came together. So he came in and he was like, look, I think I want to go try healthcare again. And so he's been dabbling in some other stuff, and he's got involved in NFTs and he's still active. Like I said, we talk every Monday. They're still active, referring deals, talking about deals, sitting on boards. So they're active venture partners of Morgan Creek Digital, but they're not general partners the way they were in Funds 1 and Funds 2.
He's like, bro, let me tell you something. He's like, you're working for people now,
That is the thing that Jason is an iconoclastic guy. I mean, he's just a unique guy. And, we get along because we both have strong opinions loosely held.
Sure.
But that perspective was interesting, right? To him, I was the suit. Now I don't wear suits anymore. I got my polo shirt. I've gone to the black T-shirt like everybody else. But, I don't wear the suit anymore. Although this morning on TV, which is kind of why it's o'clock, so I did wear the suit jacket, no tie, but I did wear the suit jacket for Fox. But where I pitched our new crypto ETF, CRYP.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is he didn't like putting the suit on, right? He's not a suit guy. And he didn't really like, they say, working for the man. Yet the man and woman pay the bill. Look, you know the rule, the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules, or they who have the gold make the rules. And they happen to be big institutions. And so I learned a long time ago that you can be the best investor in the world. You can have the best product in the best sector. And if no one cares, right, because you don't sell to the right pools of capital, it's like the joke that's not politically correct, right? If a man says something in the forest, there's not a woman there to hear it. Is he still wrong? Yes. Ask our wives. They'll tell us that.
Right.
But I still love the fact that what they brought to the equation was, one, youthful enthusiasm. And Pomp has more energy than most other people and Jason has just a boundless enthusiasm for big ideas. And so together, we actually had a really interesting picture of what could be in the space. And so, talking about being co-investors in Liquid Death, we also created an innovation fund that invests in small businesses that are doing innovative things, like canned water that's cool, which it is. And we invested in a new way to do, laundry and delivered to your house instead of you having to drop it off all the